Hi there. The original script for House of the Dragon Episode 1 was publicly released online this past week, and I've been going over it making videos about certain important deleted scenes, such as Daemon and Viserys discuss Old Valyrian prophecy. But I realize another important one I should split off into its own video to give it more focus for all of you guys, is that in the original script, we would have actually seen Daemon making his heir for a day toast on camera. And the script describes it, that in the final version, it cuts away to the small council hearing a second-hand report about it. And no one really questions whether he did it or not, but it's the ambiguity of the way he said it. What did he mean by that? Did he mean it as this seditious, flippant toast celebrating his own rise? Or was it, he said, oh, let's thank the gods for giving us an heir for a day, as, bitterly angry at the gods for killing his nephew. And he wasn't celebrating himself. It was almost self-pity and self-deprecation. And he's too prideful to defend himself to Viserys of, oh, I didn't mean it like that. What exactly happened? And looking at the script, it is very ambiguous. And before I go through it, I'll give you my conclusion up front, the whole point of this video. They were right to cut this, because it's too ambiguous, and it would have directly fallen into mistakes that Benioff and Weiss did on Game of Thrones, where they're frauds. They're not real screenwriters. They don't have screenwriting degrees or formal training. They were novelists before this, and when we got our hands on their scripts, they looked like books instead of screenwriting. They broke basic rules of screenwriting that you don't give hyper-specific instructions to actors about how to play a certain scene, or their mental state, paragraph-long descriptions, or conveying exposition with a smile in a certain way. No actor could ever do this. I look forward to the day when the cast finally, like with Joss Whedon, comes forward and complains, these instructions were gibberish, he doesn't know how screenwriting works. The professional ones like Lena Headey and Nikolai, really, this isn't, you don't know what you're doing, these are basic mistakes. There are visibly weird things about the scripts they did. But I'll go through that. Start with, what did this original script do that this doesn't really work? It directly says, Daemon's mood is unknowable. And the actual dialogue leading up to this is the same. The way he says it, it's fine. We're looking at the script directions are more important. He says, King and council have long rued my position as next in line, but dream and pray as they might, I'm not so easily replaced. He said that in the final version. Directions. The prince's toast snares the room's attention. The room hisses and jeers, his playful opening, then his mood darkens. Daemon, the gods give just as the gods take away. This is where it cuts out in the final version, but all he says after that is, so, to the king's son Balon, the heir for a day. Right after he says, the gods give and take away. What's important is the scene directions after that. Right after he gives the toast, the room falls completely silent, and no one knows how to react to what he just said. Like even says, his mood is unknowable, and the people who were there firsthand, who witnessed it, don't know what he meant. Because he said it in such an ambiguous way. Says, quote, most of the men don't know how to react to this seditious-sounding toast. And it's silence, but then Mizaria's lilting laughter breaks the silence. She starts, oh, you were joking, you're making a playful jab. And then Captain Barrett, the captain of the Gold Cloaks' right hand, then he takes that up as permission, and Mizaria starts laughing, then Barrett starts losing his own laughs. Then gradually the rest of the room picks up on it. The other sycophants in Daemon's entourage join with guffaws and japes. Daemon smiles thinly at the power he holds over this room of flatterers and fools. He drinks his wine. So there would have been this the whole room falls silent, who were cheering his every sentence. Suddenly they all go, wait, what? They didn't know what he meant by that. And then just gradually one or two of them went, oh, you're making a playful, you're being flippant about, ha, I'm the heir for a day again, and you're bragging. When he could have been really, well, let's thank the gods for giving us an heir for a day. Aren't they merciful and generous? That he didn't mean it like that. This ties into a lot of things, Martin. You can do this in a book, you can't do it in TV, where someone says something and, to describe a third, that where someone says something and everyone misinterprets it. They were right to cut this. Even with, I can mentally envision some good editing where if the camera really focused on everyone was silent, didn't know what he meant, and then you look at Daemon being scornful and scowling that privately he didn't mean it like that. You could, but it's asking too much of an actor, much less too much of the audience. They shouldn't have done this. It's too subtle. How do you script his mood is unreadable? How do you play, as an actor, how do you play he says it in an unreadable, neutral way? How do you play something so ambiguous that you can't tell if he's bitter or celebrating himself, or in celebrating? You can't. And this brings up when Game of Thrones would do this. I'm keeping this short, but I'm going to start yelling about this more in the longer hour-long thing I have about the whole script, which, this is a good script. Benioff and Weiss didn't know how screenwriting works. Like, the Battle of the Bastards episode, there's this line that was infamous to us from Daenerys, when she's defeating the slavers, that the dragon is approaching, and they go, "No, my reign has just begun." And she doesn't have to turn to face the oncoming dragon, and she only allows the faintest hint of a smile that says, "My tyranny's not ended, mother effer, it's only just begun." I'm pausing for emphasis. How the hell does an actor emote with a smile the specific words, "No, my tyranny's not ended, it's just begun"? Not just smiles wryly or smiles playfully, but they do this constantly. This is not an isolated example. And it's not just examining their scripts. We've seen them saying this in video interviews. But the hype media just doesn't report on it, that what they're saying is gibberish. Benioff, Weiss, and Brian Cogman, their lackey, between the three of them, they don't have screenwriting degrees, and we have videos of them saying this. Please watch the cover video on my channel, the one on the Last Watch documentary. The second half is more about how the logistics fell apart because they haven't run TV shows before, but the first half I put a montage of all these interviews where they give their bizarre views on screenwriting, which are nonsense, including this clip from when Cogman in Season 7 was talking at a panel at a local college screenwriting thing, and it's nonsense. I also have it as a standalone clip. I'll link them in the description box below, but just as a slide here so I don't get into copyright stuff again. There is a video of Cogman saying, and tell me in the comments, a lot of you remember this clip, where at some length and in animated form he acts out, "I have known some of these actors for 10 years so well that I can write an entire scene where he doesn't speak and just script the subtext of what's going on, and he will convey all of that behind the eyes or with a look." And other people who have seen the Blu-ray commentaries have also noticed this. Not many people reviewed the Blu-ray commentaries, but those that have, such as Lord Commander Dunn's channel, a couple others, went, yeah, it's all they do is talk about the actors' faces obsessively. And it's not like they didn't have dialogue. Even when they abandoned the books, it's like Cogman explaining, "I scripted out and we even filmed entire dialogue scenes that we'd later cut because we felt it was more impactful, just the faces." That's because you're letting the actors carry the scene and the audience project whatever meaning they want onto a blank face. And because they want it to make sense, they'll project their own explanations onto it. And that worked for a while for the casual hype viewers. Even they were getting sick of it by Season 8 when this is too big to just, read it into his face while he's doing it. This is nonsense. You can't... Both the plot mechanics and the idea that, no, they've really convinced themselves they're capable of doing that. And they're breaking basic rules of screenwriting that you do not script a character's inner mental state in that level of detail beyond you only write what you can see on screen, or that they said it angrily, or he's a little conflicted, maybe a line here, but these these paragraph-long, multi-sentence descriptions of of the characters' inner thoughts. And let me tell you, the experienced actors in the cast, not the teenagers they hired up when they were younger, but Dinklage, Lena Headey, Nikolai Coster-Waldau, the older actors know this is not how scripts work. They know how weird these look. That it's what you'd expect from someone who's a novelist. It looks like a novel. And I'll close with that I really like, go and watch the other video, I really like this comment someone made about 3 years ago on one of the videos I posted of this. It was about, they did the same thing in the pilot. That the pilot episode is, the exposition is in the script notes. That they didn't notice that they never call Jaime and sister brother and sister in dialogue. And when we got our hands on the original script, you realize they do refer to them as brother and sister multiple times in the script notes. Never, like, this isn't even tone or gives him a screw you smile. This is basic exposition that you aren't giving in dialogue. And that's the whole thing that Craig Mazin, who is now doing The Last of Us after Chernobyl, actually, they showed it to him privately, and the one note he had was all caps, massive problem. And then he listed off, like, Jaime and Cersei are brother and sister. You don't pick up on that from the show. They went, well, it's in the script. It's just in the subtext. That they don't even realize that it's not just subtext. Even, like, information, like plot exposition, was in the script notes. And they don't know how that works, and they had to go back and revise. These were problems they had since the pilot. And if you're wondering, oh no, they started out strong but went bad, these were mistakes they were making since the pilot. HBO was covering for them in the earlier seasons, and much like an iceberg, you only see the tip. These problems were behind the scenes since season 1. Season 2, when they were making stuff with, like, the Talissa storyline with Robb, it reached a point where even HBO couldn't hide it anymore by season 5. But this wasn't season 8, season 5, these weren't isolated. So I want to read off what someone who was one of my followers said. After I did this whole thing on the pilot script, they put exposition in the script notes and don't seem to recognize that the viewer can't see them. She said, basic things I was taught in script writing classes were, don't write the camera shows this and that, don't use actors as puppets, and most importantly, the script will never be seen by the audience. The art of screenwriting is making sure that someone who can't read the script notes would understand it. You should, like at a table read, you've all seen the clips I have on, it's like the most popular thing on my channel, of them bizarrely reading off when the Night King dies, and it's like Cogman is acting it out. And I point out, that isn't normal. He shouldn't have that much of a description going on. And it reads jokey, like it's supposed to be entertaining to be read aloud. You should be able to do a live read of a script where you don't read the script notes, where you're acting out a scene like a stage play. Like, do it as a stage play without the notes. And to the actors hearing if they're hearing those scene notes, it almost makes sense. The true measure of it is if it's presented like a TV show or like a live play. Without those script notes, would you know that Jaime and Cersei are brother and sister? Or how do you micromanage the actors like that? I'm also going to link a video where they would micromanage the actors, and just as they did the directors, in the script, having these really specific instructions about, shoots him a smile that says, I've only just begun, mother effer. Actors can't do that. This isn't what normal scripts look like. And it's not just that it's unfair or micromanaging, it is physically impossible. And to the point where he's talking about, I can write an entire scene, including informational content like who's brother and sister. It got they really don't understand, and they just deluded themselves into saying publicly. They also said this at the Austin Film Fest panel, wow, the actors are so great in their role, they don't even need to speak. And, like, the room revolted because that isn't what screenwriting is. It was a screenwriters conference. So, thinking of what Benioff and Weiss would do, that's something they would do, where they have an ambiguous thing. Go, no, don't worry, the Daemon actor will be able to subtly convey what he's really thinking. And it's really ambiguous, even though it says verbatim in the script, his mood is unreadable, and there's an awkward silence where the room can't tell what he meant by that. that at some point in the revision on this script, they realized what a normal screenwriters would do with a full writer's room. No, this is too complicated for an actor to ever convey. Let's leave it open to interpretation it's supposed to be open to interpretation by leaving it off screen. Otherwise, the audience will read their own meanings into it and might read the wrong meaning into it. You can't script things that subtle. So this is a win for House of the Dragon, and they avoided one of the specific mistakes that the amateur frauds Benioff, Weiss, and Cogman embraced. And this is great, but I'm so upset that after everything that happened, the mainstream media, they're just reactors now, hype reporters, recappers, and reactor culture, as opposed to a serious attempt to sit down and go, looking through the behind-the-scenes materials and how they were running the show, how they organized their scripts. Maybe a first-time showrunner with no prior television experience and a novelist who has no screenwriting degree didn't know how to run a TV show. This is just this amateur mess. And I don't see that level of analysis here. And now we're walking into... I actually see people saying, oh, they won't... Well, maybe they learned their lesson for their next Netflix project. What lesson? They never went to film school. They don't know how screenwriting works. And they hate being corrected. They don't want to learn. They're offended when people tell them this isn't how screenwriting works. And if they were doing this since the pilot through the 8th season, they're never going to learn. And I just hope for gradually this accumulates. I have a small YouTube channel here, but that people realize what went wrong. Remember all of the staring in season 8? There's like pages and pages of script notes where they're hyper specifically trying to micromanage the actors' performances, breaking basic rules of screenwriting that no, you're conveying it with a face. Thankfully, we didn't do that with House of the Dragon. The Daemon scene should have cut away like that for something so ambiguous.